Hello, English 304 students. This is your teaching assistant, Lindsay Hickman, and I'm coming to you from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. You might remember me from teaching one of your classes earlier this semester. I will be assisting Dr. A. Strike as we try to get through the rest of this crazy semester. I hope everyone is healthy and okay right now. I really hope that no one's sick and everyone is handling this okay. If you are struggling with just dealing with the craziness that the last few weeks have been, make sure to look at the Coastal Student Success link on the front page of our Moodle. There should be a lot of resources that are provided there. I know that it's not the same as being face-to-face with somebody on campus, but it's what we're all trying to deal with at this point because we really want to flatten that curve and prevent anyone from getting this virus and just helping people stay healthy. So today we are going to be covering one of the most notable and now beloved figures of Victorian literature, someone that you have probably quoted yourself unknowingly or people in your life have quoted before. And that person is Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde is, before we get into his life though, we need to know and understand some key terms. So you might want to screenshot these, type these out, or just write them down somewhere just to keep in your head. It's pretty much just creating art for art's sake. Okay, so instead of creating it for money or fame or famous people or the queen or whoever, it's just creating art for art's sake and beauty for beauty's sake. Charge of the Light Brigade is almost the exact opposite of the aesthetic movement, if you just want to have them in two separate categories. So this was sort of like the hippie movement of the day. Everybody had long hair, flowery, flaunting clothing. Instead of bell bottoms, they had fur coats and fur robes. And Oscar Wilde was basically at the time what today would be considered a talented Kardashian. Now, Dr. A. Strike's gonna think I'm crazy about this, but follow me. Oscar was born in Ireland in 1854. His father was a doctor and owner of the hospital, and his mother didn't have to work. She was a poet, so she had a cushy enough lifestyle to where she could just throw parties with her poetry friends or literature friends. Imagine a really fancy book club, and that's what you've got with her. Oscar grew up in a privileged place. His parents were wealthy. He ended up being able to attend Oxford. He was pretty well off even before he wrote or did anything. What was something that's really interesting about Oscar Wilde was being born in 1854. He was born not only right at the turn of the century, alive right at the turn of the century, but he also got to witness and meet some amazing people and things. Oscar Wilde met Walt Whitman. So if you've taken an American literature class, you'll remember Walt Whitman and all of those people in the most important works that Oscar Wilde wrote and that are still read and performed today are The Picture of Dorian Gray, and that was published in 1890, and The Importance of Being Earnest, a play that was first performed February 14th, 1895. I cannot stress to you how important The Importance of Being Earnest was and is in the world of theater, and even there have been movies and broadcasts of it on television. So it's a really big deal. It's still performed today. I believe the last iteration of it was performed in London with Colin Firth. So it's a big deal. There are so many famous British actors and actresses that have been one of the countless performances of the show. So just think of any big time British actor or actress. If they've done any time in theater, they've probably been in a performance of The Importance of Being Earnest. Another key term that you'll want to remember that comes directly from the play itself is bun burying. I'm going to spell that out for you because it sounds weird. B-U-N-B-U-R-Y-I-N-G. This is a word that was used in the play for people who needed an excuse to avoid social obligations. So introverts unite, you have a new word to hashtag, bun burying. The word bun burying first appeared in Act 1 of The Importance of Being Earnest when a character explained that he invented a fictional friend, Bunbury, who was an invalid, who was always his excuse to get out of going to events that he didn't want to go to. The most important thing that happened to him while he was in North America was he met and fell in love with a man named Robbie Ross. Now, remember, just alarm bells going off in your head, homosexuality is extremely illegal. Okay, right up there with like murder. Okay, this is not some little petty theft kind of crime. Really, really, really illegal. But that didn't stop Wilde. Even though Wilde was married and had 2 children, so he was still in the closet, but he was gay. Oscar Wilde got back to Europe and his plays started gaining some traction and getting some performances. He fell in love. Yes, Oscar fell in love yet again, but this time it was a little closer to home. Oscar fell in love with Sir Alfred Douglas, who went by the name Bosie, because that's so much better. Oscar and Bosie had a wonderful little romance, and all this is awesome and fun until Bosie's family gets wind of it. You know that meme of that boxer guy with the big mustache? See the picture there? That's Bosie's father. Seriously. Bosie's father was not only just a knight like Sir Alfred Douglas, he was a Marquis of Queensberry. The 9th Marquis of Queensberry, which means that he has this hoity-toity title and they have some money. His father was the archetype for father of the homosexual kid that doesn't take it well. Okay? Just imagine boxer dude over here finding out his son is gay. His dad was big and tough, and he even invented the modern rules for boxing. So that's why he's a boxer dude. The Marquis of Queensberry left what is called a calling card. He left it for Wilde, and it said, and I quote, "For Oscar Wilde, posing, some die might." I'm gonna pronounce that again. Somdamite. Did you catch it? Some die might. Let's spell it together. Spell it together. SOMDIMITE. The hoity-toity Marquis of Queensberry misspelled sodomite. So Oscar thought that this insult and this misspelling was just too good to not expose. So Oscar jumped at the chance to sue the Marquis of Queensberry. He sued him for libel. Now, just picture this flamboyant, fur-wearing, rich Oscar Wilde, who is gay, which is extremely illegal, is suing the inventor of modern boxing. Under the 1843 Libel Act, okay, Queensberry could avoid conviction for libel only if he could demonstrate that his accusation was in fact true. So Queensberry, who has money, his lawyers hire lots of private detectives to dig up dirt on Oscar Wilde, and they find everything. The trial opened on April 3rd, 1895, and the final nail in Wilde's coffin was when the prosecution asked directly whether Oscar had ever kissed a certain servant boy. And for some reason, Oscar fell into this trap. Wilde responded, and I quote, "Oh, dear no. He was a particularly plain boy, unfortunately ugly, and I pitied him for it." End quote. The prosecution had him really screwed. So under the Libel Act, what's really interesting is that the guilty party has to pay the prosecution or the winning party's debt from a trial. So with Queensberry being acquitted, all that money he spent on detectives and private investigators made Wilde liable for tons of debt, and it ended up bankrupting him. As soon as the libel case ended, the government charged and convicted Oscar Wilde of gross indecency under the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885 and sentenced him to 2 years of hard labor. What was most devastating through all of this was that Oscar Wilde had to sell everything to pay for his debts, and that included his home, his fur coats, and most importantly, the rights to all of his written works. The plays, the books, the poems, everything. So Oscar Wilde went from being extremely wealthy and well-to-do to now he had nothing, and he was in prison. What really, really sucked for Oscar Wilde was the person that he thought that he loved and thought that it was his true soulmate, Bosie, kicked him to the curb. He dumped him, completely dumped him, and ended up becoming a serious homophobe and anti-Semite. And Bosie became the real villain in this whole story because he profited off of Wilde's imprisonment. Bosie wrote a book about Wilde in which he described Wilde, and I quote, "He was one of the most powerful forces for evil that has happened in Europe for the last 300 years. Dude. The story has a super sad ending, which you probably have figured out by now. Once Oscar gets out of prison, he's sick. He's exhausted. He's lost 50 pounds. The only true friend Oscar has is the one man that came to visit him during his imprisonment, his first real love, Robbie Ross. Robbie was really with him to the end. He not only ended up taking care of him until his death in 1900 in Paris at the age of 46, but he bought all of the rights back to all of Wilde's plays and poems and books. So he made sure that they were available for future generations like us. Without Robbie Ross, we probably would never have read or heard any of Oscar Wilde's work.